Hey everybody, this is Gwen the Ducky.
And this is Wicked the Alien.
Welcome to the very first video of the Ducky Alien Files. Today's video
Yep.
will cover the Claire Inglis case. Now, Claire Inglis was a single mom who lived in the UK.
Yes, I remember reading that before I dozed off.
And then the criminal in question is Christopher McGowan.
So, I hate those kind of. That's called a little boy, I think. You remember when we talked about how men don't treat women right, that they should be stripped of their manhood?
Yes, that is absolutely right. I think men like that should be stripped of their manhood title.
Yeah.
And it could lead to things like this: toxic
Yes, that's true.
masculinity.
That's not masculinity, that's stupidity. Anyways, go on.
Alrighty, so I first came across this case on the video made by Adrian Stewart of Coffee House Crime. If you haven't checked out Coffee House Crime yet, you should, as he covers the cases that he covers with tender love and care. He gives more insight into the victim as opposed to the perpetrator, the
Yeah,
murderer, if it makes any sense.
the anatomy piece, as I call them.
Right.
Sorry, that's what
And
I call them. That.
right, in this case, I decided to do Claire Inglis because this case, it's one of those things where the red flags go ignored. It was nothing more than very good intentions leading to a road to hell.
As usual, that's sometimes the case. Yep. So tell me the
Uh
story.
yeah, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read the parts that
Are
stood out
pertinent.
to me the most. Yeah.
Yeah.
The headline of the article in question, which is from the BBC of all places, is called
Yeah.
Claire Inglis. She said he would change. He did, into a murderer. When Christopher McGowan was released on bail from prison, a court ordered that he stay at the home of his new girlfriend.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, here we go. So
Yeah, that's
basically, he
good.
was a criminal with a string of previous convictions, including a domestically aggravated breach of the peace and a lengthy history of breaching bail.
Oh, that's a real keeper. I never date a criminal. In fact, personally, I came across criminals, and that's why I always had to make a new Facebook, if you know what I mean.
Well, more ideal situation would be to block the person, unless
I
the person
did that. I
evades.
learned
And
that
yeah,
lesson. Anyway, so he had a big, lengthy rap sheet.
he did. Very lengthy, in fact. A lot of warning signs somehow went ignored.
Yes.
Including
Oh boy.
Considering that his rap sheet did not include murder, she didn't truly know what he would ultimately be capable of.
You
Yes,
know what the warning signs are for our audience?
yes, when they have such an extensive criminal record such as this,
Yeah.
within weeks, his partner, Claire Inglis, the subject of this video, a full-time mom to her young son, was dead.
Oh, darn.
McGowan beat and strangled her before burning her with a lighter and pushing a wet wipe down her throat.
What an okay asshole.
Yes, what an asshole indeed. After he was found guilty at the High Court in Sterling, it emerged his previous convictions included three for assault. McGowan
Oh,
has now been
that's
jailed
like
for a minimum of 23 years for a murder that was described as being beyond sadistic by the judge.
I would think so.
Yes,
I agree with the judge.
right, as we should.
Yes, I just agree with the judge because it's human nature not to do that kind of stunt in the first place. That kind of bull.
Nope, that's right. All right, now we're going to get to the nitty gritty of Christopher McGowan. His nickname
Sure.
is Kicky. And as I stated earlier, he had an extensive rap sheet. He picked up his first conviction for a breach of peace in 2009 when he was just 14 years old.
Oh boy, that sounds like a sociopath right there. That's one of the signs is that if you've had a criminal history when you're a little
Yep,
kid, that's one of the signs. The other sign is hurting animals, hurting small things and stuff. That's another example of a warning sign of a psychopath. I would imagine he would not have any emotions and he would be dead inside.
that's right. That's right. More
Because
convictions followed over the next 12 years, including dealing heroin, criminal damage, shoplifting, and multiple breaches of the peace.
oh boy, that
Yeah.
guy is a real jerk. As I
Yes,
said, I probably think I'm not a profiler, but I think he's a sociopath because he exhibits one of the signs, the warning signs, which is early childhood criminal behavior. God only knows what he did to the animals in the neighborhood. I don't want to know what he probably did to them. Probably similar.
right. I wouldn't be too surprised. He was described as being in and out of jail for obvious reasons. Horrible, always getting up
Yes.
to no good. Just
Oh
someone you
boy.
would never think Claire would go for.
Or anyone who has a squirrel in their head.
Right.
Right? I wouldn't dare. If I did, I probably would rather take my brain into a jar. I certainly wouldn't be using it if I ended up in a relationship with a criminal.
But here's the thing. None of the criminal charges included murder up until Claire Inglis.
That one woman, yes.
Unfortunately, though, Claire Inglis was one of those people that tried to see the good in others.
Yes,
And
I agree with that to an extent that you can see good in some people, but not the whole batch. Because, as I said, wherever there's a human, you're going to find a bad person or a bad seed.
Well, I'm gonna say this in my own personal opinion, no human is basically good. What I
That's
mean
right.
by
Oh,
that
that.
is that humans have no basic good. Yep,
Nature
so
versus nurture.
nature
That's
versus
right.
nurture, that's right.
And there's no such thing as good in the human race.
There is good in the human race, but
Yep.
there is also bad.
I know there's the bad. I've seen the firsthand myself.
Yeah. And get this. She thought that she would be able to change him to be a better
A
man,
better
not only for
person.
her, but for her son. Remember, she was a single mom and she
Oh,
needed a,
yes, I do that.
yes,
I
she
do
needed a
that
father
part.
figure for him.
And that just blew up in her dang face. I'm sorry to hear that.
And then there's that part in the article where her mom, Fiona,
Oh,
stops at a
yeah.
photo of Claire's coffin. It's pink, her favorite color. Who knew?
I like pink.
Yeah, me too. It's practically every girl's favorite color,
And
especially
sometimes
in this
some
case, Claire's.
guys. I'm,
Yeah, and some guys,
well,
yes.
but anyways, Claire liked pink and had a pink coffin. That's interesting.
Yeah, but thankfully, the son survived, but
I bet.
understandably, he must have been very, very traumatized.
I was going to say, I think he's going to have a few things in his head that aren't going to go away
Right.
yet.
Fiona says she said she was glad to get away from him, and he's a bad one. So that indicated that she did made an attempt to escape at some point because
Yeah.
things escalated. He got abusive towards her and she had enough and wanted to leave, as is with many cases of domestic violence.
Yes.
But
He will.
unfortunately, 3 weeks later, she phoned out of the blue and said she's in a relationship. So, yeah, very typical of domestic violence cases where the person that's on the receiving end of abuse, you know, escapes, but then ends up going back to their abuser, because survival.
Yeah. Survival. I would rather personally, if anyone did that to me, I'd say I'm celibate for the rest of my life. I don't give a damn. But then again, I have a strong personality. Uh, I did have one jerk in my life that was something similar. Remember him?
Oh, yes, I remember him. He who must not
Yep.
be named.
Yes. Uh. Bad boy.
Right. But at least he didn't murder anybody yet.
Yet. Anyways, what else do you have about Claire?
Like I stated earlier, she was one of those pe- people that wanted to see the good in people.
Yes,
So
understandably.
she thought she saw a potential for him to change into a good man
Oh,
that is a good husband to her and her son, a father. That's what she wanted out of him. And she went to
she did.
great lengths to make him into the person that she wanted him to be. And it's a good thing. You
Yes.
want your man to be good to you and your son. You want him to be a good father figure and a husband.
Yes, that's just human nature.
Her parents had to cut off contact with Claire so that it would get through to her and prompt an end to the relationship. Her mother described her as saying to her, "Oh, you're just a drama queen. He's good to me. He's going to change." Well, he did change all right
Into a
into a
complete.
murderer.
Yes, he did.
She was hoping that he'd finally soften up, but that didn't happen.
No, it didn't. He just was getting more and more jerky, if you know what I mean, like a jerk. So tell me more.
As we can recall from the earlier conversation on this, Claire did at one point escape, but she ultimately came back to her boyfriend, that is Christopher. Abusive relationships are really hard to stay out of depending on the person. So it's safe to say that if a person does come out of an abusive relationship for good, regardless of how long the abusive relationship lasted, regardless of whether or not they knew what they were getting into, and regardless of whether or not they have the resources to do so, whether you're rich or poor, we should commend them for it, not do any form of victim blaming, as victim blaming is basically a justification of a crime committed by the perpetrator. This is why I have the personal belief that victim blaming is just as much of a criminal activity as the very act of murder, rape, and any other sort of abuse.
There
Absolutely
was no
not.
excuse for abuse in any form.
There's nothing wrong with, you know, getting in a relationship or marrying someone from a criminal record, given that
Don't
they're
give
not too harmful. And what we mean by not too harmful, we mean they're
give him
not egregious like domestic abuse and killing off animals and all of that, like, but still, cut her some
don't.
slack. Cut
It
her some
was
slack.
not her fault. She didn't kill herself. Yeah, I would lose my stuff if someone was saying, "Oh, my mother, for example, tried kill herself by drinking." I'd say, "Well, she was stressed at the time." I'd try to defend my mother, and would go as far as you don't say those types of things about dead people. You have to respect the dead
Yes, please respect the
because,
dead. That is,
yeah,
unless the dead have done egregious acts themselves. But other than that, if they haven't intended any harm on
keep your
anyone,
mouth.
whether it be for bringing in a man that had a rap sheet, you know, regardless of how bad it is, again, given nothing too egregious,
Yes,
they
I
he had
understand
nothing
that.
but, again, as long as it didn't cause significant harm to the person involved, but still, there's no reason for all that victim blaming. And
No,
there's
there is.
so how could
Yes, that.
he know that he was gonna kill her in spite of his criminal history? Because there was no death involved in the criminal history of Christopher McGowan.
Yeah, Christopher McGowan. Yeah, I have a certain name for him, but I won't say it here.
Right.
It
The
wasn't
way
her
he
fault.
presented the facts in the video, that is that very video on the Claire Inglis case, of course. actually made it. So she seems like she's a well-intentioned individual who had a very good heart, and frankly, rightfully so, as for obvious reasons, she was much loved by her own community. So much so that they had a plaque made in her honor. I thought it was pretty. Anyway, here's a picture of it. She really loved her son and wanted to
Yeah,
have a father for her son, considering that she was a single mom that needed help raising her child. It was nothing more than just that, a well-intentioned attempt at, you know, bettering herself and her son's life, by giving her a husband and a stepfather for her son.
that's right.
I don't know if I could articulate it any better than that,
You
but
did a good
that's the
job.
reality. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. An idea as to why the situation escalated the way it did was because, as according to this passage, the older the offenses that's on the record, then obviously the less significance or weight the sheriff will attach to that. There isn't a three strikes you're out or anything like that, though in this case, I wish there was. And here's why. According to yet another passage from the BBC, Claire had 76 separate injuries on her head and body. 76 separate injuries. Dude, no three strikes for that. That that is just disgraceful. But here's a little more of where that came from. The pathologist said Miss Inglis's blood had shown traces of cocaine, etazolum, and fluorobrazolam. And if I butcher that, I'm very sorry. Anyway, of the last two drugs mentioned, her report said these can be very potent and combined can result in a degree of respiratory depression, which may have compounded the effects on her head and neck injuries and potentially played a role in her death. And the report from one Dr. Shearer concluded that the cause of death was head and neck injuries. And you see why we need a three strikes law, especially in somewhere like the UK. This is why. On a positive note, thankfully, he is in prison as of October for a minimum of 23 years. And I couldn't be more happy for her friends and family, considering what they now have to go through with what this scumbag did to her. I just pray and hope that they eventually get the peace that they deserve in their lives, as well as comfort, most importantly. Alrighty, that being said, what are your guys' thoughts on our discussion of this case? Please leave your responses down in the comments below, though we have a bit of a rule here, and that is please be respectful and there will be no victim blaming or anything like that. That will be
Okay.
all for tonight, everybody. If you like this
Thank,
video, please be sure to comment and subscribe. and hit the bell button. And we will see
Yeah,
you all next time.
and we'll talk about Stella Nickel next time. Just a note.
This should be interesting. Stay tuned
Okay,
for
I'll
that,
give
folks.
bye for now.
Bye for now, guys.